So, welcome everybody, all of you who are here in person and all the people who are with us online. I'm Chavet Samuelson. I'm the Director of Jewish Studies at ASU. I'm also Irving and Miriam Lowe Professor of Modern Judaism and Regents Professor of History here at ASU. So if you joined us in previous programs, either online or in person, you know the Jewish Studies at ASU is both an academic program that offers courses for undergraduates and graduate students, but we also offer programs like this one this afternoon, public program, whether it's in person or on Zoom or both, in which we try to showcase all the complexity of the Jewish experience. So we don't just talk about Jewish thought or Jewish philosophy or Jewish theology, which happens to be my area of concentration, but we talk about Jewish culture, Jewish religion, the Jewish community, and so forth. And we do so from a variety of perspectives that include all sorts of different disciplines. And our goal, if you ask me what's the purpose of Jewish studies, so the purpose is to look at education not as something that gives you a diploma or a certificate of one sort or another, but rather a lifelong commitment to learning and intellectual growth. So we began this academic year with another program on September 8th, which focused on nationalism and anti-Semitism, the case of Poland. That was the title. And we featured a very famous journalist from Poland, as well as another professor from Lund University. And both of them, those who attended that program, saw how rich the complex and complex Jewish life in Poland is today in light of the rise of anti-Semitism and in light of the rise of nationalism there. We then offered programs on the state of Israel, and the person who put it together, Nadav, why don't you show it, Nadav Berman, Dr. Nadav Berman, I should be correct, put it together. So he showcased a professor from the Hebrew University, Alex Jacobson, on September 9th, and then another person from the University of Tel Aviv, Uriah Shavit. And tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, we're going to have the third lecture in this lecture series with Professor Annabelle Herzog of University of Haifa. So if you're available, please join us. This afternoon, we're very happy to present for a lecture and a performance by Mr. Neal Brostoff, who is sitting right here in the first row, and his focus is going to be on Jewish music in Poland, past and present. Both of those lectures on Poland today and on September 8th were done with support from the Lowe Family Endowment for Holocaust and Genocide Education, and we have here Ron Lowe and Ninfa Lowe, so please raise your hand so people can see you, and I thank you for all your great involvement and commitment to Jewish studies at ASU. I also want to thank the people from the Jewish Historical Society. This is the building where we are very fortunate to hold this program. Larry Bell and Dr. Larry Bell and Rabbi Jeffrey Chesnall, we've been working very closely with them over the years, and we've held many programs of Jewish studies here in this wonderful historic building that has been renovated and has a very fascinating history. And finally, I should mention that the program today is done in collaboration with the Taube Department, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, you think it's pronounced differently, of Jewish Studies in Wrocław University, and I hope that we will continue to collaborate with them and do some interesting programs. So this afternoon, our focus is on Jewish music in Poland. And that choice, that topic, reflects our interest in the artistic dimension of Jewish experience. We have done several conferences on Jewish music, including a conference that we did in 2013 on the musical worlds of Polish Jews from 1920 to 1960. The subtitle of that conference was Identity, Politics, and Culture. And it was really a marvelous experience that included some performances as well. If you go on Google, you can find information about that conference that was held 11 years ago. Now, we should remember that nearly 3 million Jews from the Russian, German, and Austrian Empire, Habsburg empires, found themselves in the newly recreated state of Poland. In the subsequent 2 decades, the Jewish community, which was the largest Jewish community in Europe, faced the challenge of becoming Polish Jews. What does that mean, to be a Polish Jew? Out of this challenge was born a rich and vibrant culture that we explored in that conference. And even under the German occupation, the cultural and musical creativity of Polish Jews did not cease, but became a very important element of camp and ghetto lives. And that's what the conference was about, how much music there was in the Jewish ghetto, and even in concentration camps. So in the years after World War II, whether in exile or at home, the art of Polish Jews continued to reflect the complex relationship between Jewishness and Polishness and Jewish culture. And we are going to get a little bit into those issues with the help of Mr. Neal Brostoff. He is based in Los Angeles, born and raised there, right? He was a child prodigy whose musical career as a classical pianist began when he was 14 years old. That was his first solo performance. That performance had several other later performances during his young adulthood. However, from being a classical pianist, apparently there was a career shift sometimes in the early 70s, and he simply discovered or came across or encountered Jewish classical music. And that was the result of his work in synagogues as a music professional in the synagogue. And I'm sure you know many people in that position. Since the 70s, he has organized concerts on Jewish art songs, on chamber music, and in recent years, he has focused on Jewish Polish music, performing in several cities in Poland with Polish musicians. He has brought to the fore the underplayed repertoire, the very same musical treasure that we explored in the conference in 2013. So as a music educator, Mr. Brostoff also lectured on various topics related to the history of Jewish music, and he held faculty positions in Los Angeles at places such as UCLA, American Jewish University, Loyola Marymount University, and Los Angeles Pierce College. He also serves as the Cultural Affairs Director at the Israeli Consulate, and he is a music specialist at the Skirball Center in Los Angeles. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Brostoff to Phoenix and to ASU. Neal, all yours.
Thank you for your warm welcome and introduction, Professor Samuelson. I feel like I'm at the Academy Awards, except I don't have an agent. Agents always get thanked in the Academy Awards. But I do want to thank Chava Samuelson, Lisa Kaplan, for making my visit possible, and for other people on the fine ASU staff who have been very helpful, Gloria Baker and Kay Edgett. And today I met for the first time, of course, Ari and Phil. I don't know their last names, but they've been enormously helpful. So thank you to all of you. So I want to share some stories about Jews and music in Poland. There are a lot of moving parts to this surprising, newish focus in my academic and performance life. I think that a good place to begin is with some thorny issues that touch on culture, politics, and religion. The plan is that I will discuss some of these unsettling issues and also share my interests in Polish Jewish tangos and popular music idioms, classical music, klezmer, and I'll conclude with the performance of a recently commissioned composition for solo piano and historical recording. So before you say, what? Savlanut. be patient. So the right-wing Law and Order Party, headed by Andrzej Duda, since 2015, has made it a criminal offense to accuse Poland of complicity in the horrors of the Holocaust. Originally a criminally punishable offense, intervention by Israel resulted in lowering the temperature, reducing the felony to something like a misdemeanor. However, Duda's party and its restrictive laws did not hold sway with the Polish people. And while Duda is still president now, the more progressive new prime minister, Donald Tusk, is also a former president of Poland, along with his Civic Platform Party, is positioned to restore a brighter future for the Polish people and for the country's European and broader international partners. Poland has been the most Catholic country in Europe for centuries, born of Celtic, Prussian, and Slavic settlers and invaders. Historically, Poland was subject to shifting nationhood as kingdoms and commonwealths, for example, the 16th century unification with Lithuania. Poland was briefly established as a nation after World War I, and then as a client state of Nazi Germany and then the USSR. Jews lived in Poland beginning in the 10th century, mostly making their livelihoods in commerce and trading. A decline in tolerance for Jews and outright anti-Semitism throughout Europe was fueled by the Black Plague, the blood libel, and similar Christian abhorrence of Jews throughout the Middle Ages, but was often upended by philo-Semitic rulers, especially the 14th century King Casimir. A later King Casimir welcomed Jews fleeing from Germanic regions in the 16th century as honored immigrants. Many cities and regions in Poland are called Kazimirs, named for King Casimir. Despite frequent downward spirals in Catholic-Jewish relations, Jews enjoyed a relatively stable environment even into the 1930s, colored by more than a modicum of anti-Semitism. Despite the ups and downs, Poland had the largest Jewish population in the world for centuries. Catholic-Jewish relations in Poland have a long and tangled history. The most progressive change came in the early 1960s, the so-called Vatican II, which established new guidelines for Christian and non-Christian relations under the umbrella of something called Nostra Aetate. This was a major achievement under the guidance of Pope Paul VI. The most significant takeaway of Nostra Aetate for the Jewish community was the first ever declaration that Jews were not to be held for the death of Jesus. Jonathan Greenblatt, the head of the Anti-Defamation League, in 2015 stated that, quote, "The affirmation that God holds the Jews most dear and the call for mutual understanding and dialogue inaugurated a new era of positive relationship and engagement that mere decades before was inconceivable," end quote. Pope John Paul II carried on the work of Nostra Aetate, as we know, and the world is in a better place thanks to these post-Holocaust visionaries. Now, post-Shoah and post-communist Poland has new and thorny issues with Jewish music. The Polish cultural historian and sociologist Magdalena Waligórska has written extensively about perceptions of klezmer music in Poland. From the Jewish point of view, performances of klezmer music by non-Jews is often seen as cultural appropriation, a criticism with deep historical roots. George Gershwin was attacked for cultural appropriation for his opera Porgy and Bess. I've often thought about the view of 19th century French and to a lesser extent Russian composers that they could write Spanish music better than Spaniards. However, the arguments about klezmer performances must be balanced by the genre's history, where we see that non-Jews often joined and replaced Jews in klezmer music performances, especially weddings. There is an additional criticism beyond klezmer music performances, especially in the Kazimierz area of Krakow, site of the annual Krakow Jewish Culture Festival, the largest European Jewish festival of its type since 1989. And that is the Jewish Disneyfication of Kazimierz, which expresses sincere or imagined love for all things Jewish, with restaurants menus touting Jewish food, uniformly non-kosher, canned music blaring from outdoor public address systems, and the hawking of Jewish tchotchkes in open-air markets. Vologorska, who I mentioned a moment ago, is a leading authority in the research of the troubling issues of non-Jews, in quotes, performing Jewish culture in Poland and Germany. Her 2013 book, Klezmer's Afterlife, is worth reading. In the plus column, the good news is that there is a groundswell of academic interest in all things Jewish in Poland today. There are Jewish studies departments and universities throughout the country. Graduate students and professors visit Israel to study Hebrew, Jewish history, and related subjects. In a recent publication of Pakenträger, the Journal of the Jewish Book Center in Amherst, I will leave this on the stage afterwards so that you could look at it if you like. The journal in Amherst, 4 non-Jewish Polish scholars' work are highlighted. The diverse research in the journal story are Yiddish literature, art, theater, and food. I'd like to shift to a delightful and understudied species of Polish Jewish music. The tango is a fascinating and sultry dance with gorgeous music and tantalizing erotic dance steps. From the brothels and slums of late 19th century Buenos Aires, the tango is no ordinary dance. It is rather a game of seduction with unbridled displays of male machismo and equally strong female control. The sensual tango is vulnerable to analyses of interpersonal dynamics. This most unique dance is chock full of academic probing, examining and deconstructing what is going on in the male and female psyches while engaged in the choreography. However, it may be interesting to extrapolate a broader dynamic of socio-political dominance and subservience. Jewish tangos during the Holocaust may be seen as a metaphor for dominance, acquiescence, helplessness, and hopelessness. The popular Warsaw Ghetto songs of childhood innocence, Papi Rosen and Yesrolik, are about survival, toughness, and cries of, "I'm an orphan, but don't feel sorry for me." Was the Yiddish tango the ultimate protest meme? A song and dance of courage in the face of overwhelming adversity? You can decide for yourself. By contrast, the Yiddish tangos of heartbreak and despair may be seen as Jewish counterparts to present-day Latin American telenovelas. Again, for you to decide. We'll see examples of how these various types of tangos and more tango music is the love child of a delicious cross-cultural melange of immigrants in Buenos Aires from Africa, Cuba, Spain, Italy, England, Poland, and Russia. Therefore, the Jewish connection is not so mysterious, considering the large number of Polish Jewish immigrants to Buenos Aires beginning in the late 1800s, increasing in the 1920s and 30s. A number of those immigrants were active as tango musicians, as composers, violinists, and bandoneon players. The bandoneon is a button accordion and very much associated with tango music. Ethnomusicologists point to klezmer music influences on tango. Tango was exported to Paris with live orchestral performances and to Eastern Europe, especially Poland, by way of recordings. Significantly, The largest Polish recording company, Syrena Records, was founded in 1904 by one Julius Feigenbaum. And as Syrena ignited that Eastern European interest, it is not surprising that the tango scene in Poland was fluid, with Polish language tunes that were reimagined as Jewish, along with Yiddish language tangos that were translated into Polish. During the Holocaust, Yiddish tangos, not surprisingly, were considered by the Nazis to be entartete Musik, degenerate music. But the beauty of the music and the socio-cultural context, subtext of power and virility only amplified the song's popularity. The lion's share of composers and singers of popular music in intra-war Poland were Jews. Some of these musicians also rose to prominence with tangos, particularly Mieczysław Wag, Jerzy Petersburski, and Henryk Wars. The standout was Wars, who survived the Shoah and emigrated to the States in 1947. As a refresher of what tango sounds like, here's a bit of a scene that we'll watch in a moment from the 2008 film Easy Virtue, starring the 22-year-old Jessica Biel and Colin Firth. They danced to Por una Cabeza, which was written by Carlos Gardel in 1935. Gardel was arguably the most celebrated tango composer of all time. The song is viewed by historians as a metaphor for the confluence of horse racing and man's delirious love for women. And this is from a tango informational blog by an East Coast, I think, New York academic whose name is Anita Fleiter. I'm quoting, looking at the translation, Por una Cabeza is a song that compares one's addiction to horse racing to an addiction to women. It talks about how the man from whom the song's perspective is based is continuously beleaguered by his enchantment of different women whose passing glances and momentary displays of supposed affection are enough to make him swoon and gamble away his love. Remember the horse racing part of this. That was edited. Many of the samples that I will play for you are edited. They're not the full versions of the songs, which are sometimes 5 or 6 minutes. Most Yiddish popular songs, some of which were conceived of as tangos, while others were later tangoized, we might say, had their origins in the American Yiddish theater, surprisingly. It's interesting that Yiddish theater, a popular Jewish music entertainment genre, began in Europe, was transplanted to the Lower East Side of New York City, and then returned to the ghettos and camps during the Holocaust. Papa Rosen by Herman Jablokov and Frühling by Shmerka Kaczerginski and Avraham Brudno are two of the best known popular Yiddish tangos. We'll hear Papa Rosen sung by the talented native Argentinian tango specialist, I love her name, Zuli Goldfarb. Frühling is sung by another Argentinian who now lives in Vienna, Paula Barenboim. Take a moment to look at the lyrics. You have to get into an Evelyn Wood groove because I couldn't put the lyrics and the music slide on the same slide, so just to get a feel for what the song is about.
La próxima canción, Papyrosen, es una canción que quiere decir cigarrillos y se refiere a un niño que anda por la calle y que no tiene para comer, necesita vender sus cigarrillos para poder llevar, seguramente durante la guerra habrá sido esto, algunas monedas para poder comer. Bueno, y ahí está.
Nacht an neväldige finster et dumm, steht ein geläufert treuer sich herum. Von Regen schützt ihm nur ein Wahn, a koschikel alter ihn an, und seine Augen werden jeden stumm. Ich hab schon mit kein Kojak mehr herumzugehen in Gas, hungrig und abgerissen von dem Regennass. Ich schlepp sich vom Baginen, keiner geht mir zu verdienen, alle lachen, machen von mir Spaß. Kupite koiche Papyrosen, trugen von Regen nicht vergossen. Hoy schon billig Benemones, kaufst du not auf mir Rachmones, Ratte wird von Hunger mich erzählen. Kupite koiche schwebalahantiken, mit was vera Josem der Quicken. Und sieht mein Schreien und mein Läufen, keiner will bei mir nicht kaufen, euch gehen will ich müssen wir holen.
Ich plunge im Ghetto von Gesel zu Gesel und kann nicht gefunden kein Ort. Nicht du ist mein Lieber, wie trog meiner Rieber, Menschen, so kost a Wort. Es leucht auf mein Heimitz der Himmel, der Bläue, je hab ich der Fund. Ich steh wie a Bettler bei ihr dritten Teuer und a bissele Sonn. Nimm zu mein Treue und bring mein Liebste, mein Treuen zurück. Zu mein Blick, Frühling, wo ich
before we listen to this, I want to set it up, sorry. The reigning star of Polish-Yiddish tangos is a talented Polish singer, Olga Mielochuk, who recently converted to Judaism, emigrated to Israel, and who now performs internationally. We'll sample Olga's artistry in two beautiful love songs. The first one, Rebecca Rivkala, makes a strong statement about Jewish identity. Then, in the sentimental love ballad, To Ostatnia Niedziela, The Last Sunday, a final meeting of two lovers before their devastating breakup. Olga sings the song in Polish alongside a vocal partner, Mendy Kahan, alternating lines in Yiddish and Polish.
Zum ersten Mal hat ihr gesehen und ihr gebeten allein, wenn hat häufen das Gewalt. Und seit schon dann pflegt nicht noch Ketten, oft nur bei ihr gebeten, sei mein, ich schied die Gott mit Gott. Ich bin der Poritz fin ganzen Städten, leg dein Kapzon ich Kleider, wart, aber ich malke, mach ich dir, ich will gar von dir, gar a kleinem Naden, sollst du sich vor mir abschmaden, in meine Palazze nehm ich dich zu sich. Oi, du mein Bescherte, deine süße Werte, sonnen so schön wie du. Aber Tante Mame und das ganze Städte schelten wollen mir. Rüfkele die Kleine, die zniestige Schöne, ist entlaufen mit der Goi. Statt der Schule gar in ein Kloster dort, will ich nur sein, ihr frei. Ein Junge, ein Gewalt, ein Geschrei, in Städte Leute das wird sein, sehr greu. Der Tate, Mama, es weint, der Bruder, Schwester und euch, die ganze Heut. Das ist mein Bescherte, seine süße Werte sollen bleiben heilig rein. Aber unsere Liebe, unsere heilige Liebe soll bloß a Cholem sein.
Take a quick look at the lyrics for this song.
זה שיר שקיים גם בפולנית וגם ביידיש.
Drugi bogacz, lepszy ode mnie, i wreszcie
Spätig zu suchen, Ottere, jetzt ist schon alles vorbei. Gekommen ist du als Zweiter, ich seh ihn und geht beruhigt unter mir, sei wie sei. Nur in Bakosche will ich der Lange, eine ist nicht zu viel. Gib mir noch ein Schabes, dem letzten Schabes, der noch sollst du gehen, wie du willst. Es ist der Schabes, der letzte, jeder mir sich zu schämen, soll es sein von uns trennen, das letzte Mal. Wir bereut an das Leben, treib mich aus von allein, ich bin oft nun allein, weinen und
Będziesz jeszcze radośnych niedziel miała. A co ze mną będzie, cóż to wie?
Bei Hobrach Bonnes schenkte mir noch ein Schabes, nur dem letzten Schabes, und noch vorbei.
We're skipping to the next song. So Henrik Vars, who I mentioned earlier, wrote the outrageously cheeky song Sex Appeal for a 1937 film with Polish lyrics. The song was later translated into Yiddish. We'll enjoy a little bit of both versions.
Jesteście silni, mocni, my słaba płeć, lecz my mamy coś, co byście wy chcieli mieć. Co jest warta wasza siła, wasza pięść i twarda dłoń? My kobiety, choć słabiutkie, mamy na was jedną broń. Sex appeal to nasza broń kobieca, sex appeal to coś, co was podnieca. Wdzięk, styl, szar, szyk, tych was zdobywamy w nich. O, jeden znak, a już nie wiecie sami co i jak. Wzdychacie godzinami, ech, och, uch, ach, i męczycie się, że strach. Jeden uśmiech, jedna minka, już każdy z was. Najtwardszy głaz od razu, grzeczny jest, serdeczny jest dla każdej z nas. Słaba płeć, a jednak najsilniejsza. Słaba płeć, a jednak najmocniejsza. Wydźwięk, szyk, szarm, styl, nasza broń to sex appeal.
I apologize for not hitting a button that would have showed you the lyrics of this song as captions, as subtitles to the song. But it's, I mean, in the context of our culture and lives today, this would be considered extremely sexist, this song, because it's all about men could do this and that, but women have sex appeal. I mean, that's the basic theme of this song, without me replaying some of it for you with the captions. And here is a very, very short, for about 30 seconds worth of the Yiddish version of the song in the recording from 1937.
inzwischen wird geschleppt der Mann mit der Freude. Die hat der Zeit azoi. Lang Haar in kurzer Zeitel, aber lachen in Abel. Nur genießt der Freud als Schmeichel, in der Mann verliebt sein Geld. Sex abziehen, mit dem zu freuen werden. Sex abziehen, das macht der Mann begehrt. Kein Reiches brennt, schick, nehmen nach dem Augenblick. Oh.
So when Henryk Wars, the composer of this song and of many Polish-Yiddish tangos, when he emigrated, he Americanized his name to Henry and changed the initial letter of his surname from a W to a V. He was soon on the road to becoming a successful composer for scores of television and motion pictures. Arguably, the best-known gig that he landed was writing the theme music for the 1960s TV series about a dolphin.
They call him Flipper, Flipper, faster than lightning. No one you see is smarter than he. And we know Flipper lives in a world full of wonder, lying there under the sea. Everyone loves.
Every country, region, tribe, and ethnic group has a repertoire of what I like to call comfort music. This is also the music which, for better or for worse, tags those countries or regions with a certain ID. Mexican mariachi music, Argentinian tango, American black Delta blues, Bosnian sevdalinkas, and Indian ragas come to mind. For Jews, especially those with Ashkenazi heritage, klezmer music most easily fills the bill. Instrumental music was played for weddings and permissible Jewish holidays by small itinerant ensembles in villages throughout Eastern Europe for centuries. After a decline in the 20th century, klezmer was back, bigger and brassier than ever, now captivating music lovers throughout the world. This reversal of fortune was rooted in the Finding Our Roots folk music gamble in Berkeley in the late 1970s. Klezmer music is now performed as concert music, recorded, and is studied academically. The multi-instrumental Veretsky Pass in Berkeley, California, is a top-notch American klezmer band. I recently interviewed two of the three members of the band concerning their recent interest in Polish klezmer music. The interview was for a series of webinars titled Freighted Legacies for Polish, Israeli, and American audiences under the umbrella of Beit Polska, Friends of Jewish Renewal in Poland. We'll see two excerpts, maybe one because we need to pick up some time, I think, from my interview. So maybe you could say a few words about how that is different, Polish, in quotes, klezmer music, from Romanian and Ukrainian and so on, klezmer, where we recognize, we hear something, if, you know, those of us who have been around long enough, even more or less, klezmer amateurs like me, and say, I know that's Romanian. There are things in it that just scream Romanian, but Polish is different. So what is there about that makes it different?
I'm going to give you not a long answer, but I have to start with the fact that in the klezmer scene today, there's been a kind of an obsession with the Bessarabian, West Ukrainian, Moldovan, Romanian area. And so that's what we hear, what we think of as klezmer today is very much a lot of times from those regions. But if we look back to the 19th century, there were a lot of klezmorim in Poland. And you can even see from descriptions of the repertoire that those Krakowiaks and all the waltzes and all the Polish things were part of the standard repertoire, at least we know in Poland. And even the earliest example that we have of a fake book from 1916, Kostakowski, it was published in New York, the standard repertoire, 10% of that is Polish. And yet in the klezmer scene, not even 1% of the tunes that you'll hear are Polish. These days,
right.
yeah. So that is a matter of taste and commercialization and marketing. So that's one thing. Yeah, go ahead. So as far as characteristics go, well, we know that the Hasidic communities, for instance, Ger and the Modzitz, communities of Hasidism use a lot of tunes that are in 3/4 time, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that meter is very uncommon in the areas of the other places. We get them, but there's a preponderance of these 3/4 meter tunes that we'll find in those Hasidic communities. So we do know that the Polish repertoire has an influence because that 3/4 meter, that kind of waltzing or mazurka, things are all in 3, comes from the north, basically. And like I say, we have things like horas in Romania that are in 3, but with the middle beat missing, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1. So we get that lilting rhythm, which Jews used to call a krimatanz, crooked or limping dance. Yeah, so that's like on the macro level what a difference is. But beside that, there are differences in ornamentation and just the style, the subdivision of the beat, the way, the aesthetic of the tunes, and it's a longer discussion to talk about what those differences are, but on the basic level, 3/4 tunes that we're playing are from Poland, or the north at least. And so what we're going to hear in this is what you hear in the influence of this area, which is a little bit of Romanian thing, some Polish, some Ukrainian, mixed together, and it
Right.
goes totally Polish at the end
Right.
in the suite.
Okay.
So I'll start with
We're gonna start with
kind of Romanian type of thing.
If it seemed like the talking and the playing were all badly out of sync, you weren't imagining it. This was a consequence, I think, of the way this webinar, that, again, as I mentioned, was for American, Polish, and Israeli audiences. All of these webinars began at 10 a.m. Sunday mornings in Los Angeles in order to reach Poland at, I think, at 7 o'clock at night, and in Israel at 8 o'clock, something like that. So apologies for that. So I think we need to pick up some time. So I am going to skip over talking about Mieczysław Weinberg. Has anybody heard of this composer Weinberg? I'll just tell you a little bit about him, but we're not going to watch this 5-minute explanation of an opera of his called The Passenger. So Weinberg was a composer from Warsaw who was steeped in Yiddish theater music in Warsaw. His father had been a musician in the Yiddish theater in Warsaw, and he escaped he eventually made his way to the Soviet Union and made very good friends with Shostakovich, Dmitri Shostakovich. And it's only in the last 20-some years that he has risen in popularity and is now considered the third great Soviet-era composer after Sergei Prokofiev. Many of you would know who he is, and Dmitri Shostakovich. So this is a story in itself, maybe for some other time, just a presentation about Weinberg. But we're going to skip over that and see a few other things. So Grzegorz Fiedelberg and his son Jerzy Fiedelberg were distinguished Polish musicians as composers, conductors, and influencers, as we would say now in the 21st century. Grzegorz was associated with the Karol Szymanowski group of composers and was an advocate for Szymanowski's recognition as a significant composer. Karol Szymanowski is considered to be one of the most significant Polish composers of the 20th century. Fiedelberg's two-movement suite, To the Wedding, for clarinet and piano, is a musical portrait of the Badchan's improvisatory Kalabesetzen, followed by the cheerful processional. The Badchan was a combination wedding entertainer, master of ceremonies, and bridal liaison for traditional Ashkenazic weddings, dating from the 17th century. This performance that you will see is from a concert of mine in Los Angeles in 2021, which spotlighted Polish and Russian Jewish art music. Two superb 20th century Polish-Jewish composers had great cultural affinities for France, a country that also provided sanctuaries for them during and following the Holocaust. The violinist, conductor, and composer Szymon Laux rose to the position of music director of the Auschwitz-Birkenau Orchestra. He made new settings of Yiddish folk songs, and he composed original chamber and orchestral music. Barely surviving the Holocaust, Laux emigrated to Paris and remained there for the rest of his life. Laux made a setting of Antoni Slonimsky's Elegy for Lost Jewish Villages in 1961. You could read the English translation while I'm continuing to speak. 10 years after Slonimsky wrote the poem in his native Polish. The art song for mezzo-soprano and piano is a poignant lament, a remembrance which recalls similar sentiments in Mordechai Gebirtich's Holocaust song, Moishele mein Freund, if you know that song. Then we will hear Laux' setting of a poem by Julian Tuwim, one of Poland's greatest 20th century Jewish poets. Digio Marzyciel, Digio the Dreamer, is a cherished child's fantasy of a little boy staring up at the sky and reimagining the clouds as tasty desserts. The performances are by Ursula Krieger, one of the finest mezzo-sopranos in Poland and a professor at the Music Academy in Łódź. We'll hear the beginning of the song performed in a concert of mine in Kazimierz Dolny last year, and then all of Digio Marzyciel. All right, we're moving on to the last part of the program, which is very different than me speaking and us watching PowerPoint slides and listening to examples of music related to Polish Jewish music. So I'll give you as compressed as I can backstory of this very, very interesting project, which has really been about 8 years in the making. So an excellent, gifted concert pianist whose name is Ina Faliks, F-A-L-I-K-S, who's from Odessa, and who was hired as a professor of piano at UCLA during the time I was working there. So I think it was in 2014 or 15 that she was hired. She is now the chair of piano studies at UCLA. So she commissioned a Russian-born composer, a young composer who lives in the Upper West Side of New York, whose name is, his last name is Zhurbin. And she commissioned Zhurbin to write something that would in some way reconnect her with Odessa, her birthplace. And the composer, his nickname is Ljova, L-J-O-V-A, so Lev Zhurbin, began to research cantors, the great Eastern European cantors of the 20th century. And he found that one of the greatest ones, whose name was Gershon Sirota, S-I-R-O-T-A. How many of you have heard of the cantor Sirota? In any case, Sirota was from Odessa, and he made his way to Poland via Vilna. And he was the cantor at the Great Synagogue of Poland in Warsaw. It was called the Great Synagogue, and it was considered to be one of the most beautiful buildings architecturally in all of Poland. And he served there for many years. And then he left and went on concert tours all over the world. He was in Carnegie Hall in the United States. He was everywhere. Then he returned to Poland, but he didn't go back to the Great Synagogue. He went to another synagogue that was newer, that was built in 1901, 1902, something like that, called the Nozyk, N-O-Z-Y-K. The Nozyk Synagogue in Warsaw, which is the only surviving synagogue in Warsaw. Why? Because the Nazis used it as a stable. And he served there for a few years. Okay, now the connection between Hazzan Sirota, Gershon Sirota, and the piece of music. So it was kind of a meditation on the work of Sirota. The composer, Lev Zhurbin, decided to use something that Sirota didn't compose, but he championed and recorded in the very, very early 1900s on Serena Records. I mentioned that record company before. So in very early recording technology, wax cylinders, if you've heard of that, and there's a 1908 wax cylinder recording of Gershon Sirota singing something from the High Holy Days, the very, very important prayer called Unatana Tokef. And Unatana Tokef kind of rolls over into Rosh Hashanah, which is all about the philosophical questions about who shall live, who shall die. But the very, very end of Unatana Tokef is a few sentences that begins with Kavakarat. And the melody, except he sings it in Ashkenazi dialect, not Sephardic. We, speak generally in Sephardic dialect. But the melody is Kavakarat roeyed ro ma'avir tzona tachat so. I'm not singing it exactly correctly, and as you can hear, I'm not a singer. But in any case, that's his focal point. And we don't really hear that in this piano piece. We hear kind of just little hints of it in the left hand. But the piano piece is really it's a minimalist piece. Minimalism was a style, it was a new genre in classical music in the 1960s with composers like Philip Glass and John Adams and Stephen Reich, if you know any of these names of composers. So the melody that you'll hear when I play this, you're going to say, oh, and some of you are going to say, this is really terribly boring. It sounds like what's sometimes called trance music. It's a cell of notes in the right hand that repeats throughout almost the entire piece with tiny, tiny changes. It's very organic, right? And that's what minimalism is all about. It's very repetitive music, but that does grow and that does change. So the piano piece is 7.5 minutes. Near the last about 2 minutes of the piece, we hear as an overlay over the piano part, the 1908 wax cylinder recording of Gershon Sirota singing Kivakarat, what I was just singing to you a little bit of. And then the piano part changes from what it was doing, completely transforms into really kind of a cantorial accompaniment. It becomes very tame and behaves as you would hear in a synagogue where there is instrumental music permitted, which is to say non-Orthodox synagogues, and that's what the piano does at that point. So just to finish this story, when I first learned that this piece existed and that Ina Felix, who I got to know when she was at UCLA, that she had commissioned it, I asked her if I could play it. I said, I would love to play this sometime in future concerts in Poland. Nothing was set at all. I mean, this is 10 years ago. And she said, no. She had a performance lock on it, which was perfectly legitimate, it's perfectly legal, ethical in every way. She wanted to do concerts eventually in Poland. She wanted to do Jewish, she doesn't really, hasn't really studied Jewish music, but she thought this would be a good thing to do in Poland. I asked her again, maybe every 2 years, every 2.5 years, if she changed her mind. Nope. But then I saw her play in a chamber music concert at a synagogue in April in Los Angeles, and I thought, what the hell, I'll ask her again. And so I said, congratulations, beautiful concert, chamber music, and then all Schubert chamber music concert. And I asked her, and she said, okay, which was just surprising beyond belief. So she was very gracious. She said she did not see at this point any pathway to doing the concerts that she would like to have done in the future in Poland, and it was all mine. So to make a long story as short as I can, I arranged to perform this at the Nozick Synagogue, the synagogue where Sirota had been the cantor after he did his concert tours and returned to Poland. And again, this is an early 20th century synagogue that had never had an acoustic piano in it before, and they had to rent, at my request, a 7.5-foot Yamaha Grand, which was grueling to get inside of the sanctuary. You cannot believe what it took to move that piano into the sanctuary of the Nozick Synagogue. In any case, that was just a month ago that I did the Polish premiere of what I'm going to play for you now. So we need a very, very short break, not enough to get up and get coffee or anything, but Ari and I need to move the piano, and the screen is going to go up, I think, and we're going to do that immediately. And then we'll have some Q&A afterwards. I hope, please think of some good questions and comments. I'd love to hear you. Before you get too far, I wanted you to see Gershon Sirota, the cantor whose voice we'll hear, and also the Great Synagogue of Poland before and after its destruction. So you're going to see in a moment, well, it will speak for itself. So that is Hazzan Sirota in his regal outfitting. So this beautiful, beautiful synagogue was blown to smithereens by the Nazis in 1944. Sirota was killed in the Warsaw Ghetto uprising in 1943. He did not live to see his beloved synagogue dynamited a year later. you heard more than just the cantor's voice. And if you were wondering, I should have mentioned, this was for cantor, boys choir, boy soloist, like a boy alto, boy soprano, and men's choir. There were no mixed choirs. There were, men and women didn't sing together because of Kohli Shah at that time. But you heard a number of voices, and that made it all the more beautiful than if we only heard the cantor's voice. So please, comments, questions, complaints.
Questions? Oh, wait, don't ask it. Right.
Well, first, just a comment. As I was sitting over there, I noticed this is the Lukowitz Family Sanctuary, and honoring Jerry Lukowitz, who's a strong supporter of this facility that we have here. And one of Jerry Lukowitz's sons is married to a tancer, and Shoshana Tancer, who's very active in Jewish studies here. Her father was Salo Baron, and who, as you may be aware, is the foremost historian of Jewish studies in the 20th century, born in Poland, in Tarkov. So that for you to be able to perform here, there is a Polish connection, to this, and it's just brings everything together.
Thank you for that important historical, adding that to,
Good.
to
Then
what we know.
my question, we had the privilege of going to the Jewish Cultural Festival in Krakow quite a number of years ago. It was on a ASU Jewish Studies trip, and the closing performance had, 10,000 people.
At least.
Yes, right. I mean, it was, shoulder to shoulder to be able to move, without being prejudicial, looking around, there were very few Jewish noses, in the crowd. And it was just wonderful that, a country that you view as, that a lot of people view as anti-Semitic, and certainly, historically, very, negative things, that there would be so many, non-Jews that were there to witness Jewish music.
Not only to witness, but to participate, to rock out, to dance. I mean, thousands and thousands of people in the closing ceremonies, in the closing concerts of the Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow. And for those of you who don't know, if you don't know about this festival, which is an extremely important festival on the global stage, not just Poland or Europe, this was started by a very Philo-Semitic non-Jew whose name is Janusz Makusz, and he very bravely started this in 1988, a year before the fall of communism in Poland. And it's been going strong ever since then. I did a performance in the Galicia Museum in the Kazimierz area of Krakow 2 years ago, and it wasn't until I got there that I realized that this concert was actually part of that festival. It hadn't been made clear to me before that, and it's a wonderful festival. And one of the greatest American Orthodox cantors, who was born in the United States, whose name is Ben-Zion Miller, in Borough Park, New York. In the 2012 Krakow Festival, in the closing concert, you see him wearing a T-shirt and singing Israeli songs, and it's wonderful. He did not look like he would look in Shul in Borough Park, New York, on Shabbos morning. And it's a wonderful festival. So thanks for mentioning that.
I have a question, Neal.
Okay, Eileen.
Okay, thank you. Oh, actually, kind of two questions.
Sure.
Going back to the tango and Zuli Goldfarb?
Yes.
Okay. Well, listening to her so reminded me of Fado in Portugal.
Oh.
And I went to the Fado Museum in Lisbon.
Okay.
And if you haven't been there, there's a lot of music as well as a lot of the photographs of the historical performers. And Fado is still sung there. But she so reminded me of a Fado singer, and the song so reminded me of Fado. Is there any relationship?
I honestly, I don't know. Maybe I'll learn more, because when I go to Poland again in late January of next year for International Holocaust Remembrance Day and a whole balagan of concerts in Łódź, Poland, and in Paris that I've been asked to be music director for, my wife and I might go to Spain and Portugal for the first time. And I will remember your question when I'm there. And my wife loves Fado. I am less familiar with it, but that's a really, really good question. So thanks.
And I have one other question.
Oh, yes.
And it's about tango. So one of my favorite composers who recently passed away, Leonard Cohen, he did a song called Dance Me to the End of Time. One of the interesting things that you will see on YouTube is that in Argentina, they have made that into a tango.
Oh.
And I was wondering if just Jewish music throughout the world is a great basis for the tango.
Yes, yes, and it's a very good question, very good comment, because of how much klezmer music absorbed in all of the host countries. I mean, there are arguments that are made by Jewish musicologists, this is going to sound very radical, that there's no such thing as Jewish music. At Jewish music conferences that I've been to, international Jewish music conferences, for 2 days there's arguments about if there's such a thing as Jewish music, okay? And it's not a totally invalid argument, all right? And especially looking at klezmer music under, a little microscope, in Romania, and in Ukraine and Poland, it picked up everything, and there was all of this interplay between non-Jewish and Jewish musicians. But now that klezmer is really a part of what we call world music, what we used to call ethnic music, but it's no longer acceptable. It's politically incorrect to call what we used to call ethnic music, so now it's world music. And klezmer music has taken its place alongside tango and, and so many other kind of mariachi music as the Jewish world music. And the Klezmatics, which is a very, very important klezmer band based in New York, and that performs all over the world and records, they bring jazz into it. It's really a melange of many things. It was originally, and now in America, it absorbs, American music idioms beautifully.
I just wanted to say that the Klezmatics will be playing at the Musical Instrument Museum.
In Tucson?
Phoenix.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know there was also a musical instrument. I only know the one in Tucson.
This is probably you really need to go and see it. It's unusual, the museum.
Thank you. I don't want to risk missing my flight at 6 o'clock to go back to Los Angeles, but otherwise, next time I come here, I will be sure to see that. Yeah, thank you.
Last question? Ava, you want to end us?
You want me to end? Yes.
Don't forget the...
Yes. Oops. So thank you for taking us through such a long, kind of an interesting journey.
Thank you, Hannah.
And the question to me would be, how much of it is about modernization, like the tangoization of klezmer? How much of it is about modernization, modernity? How much of it is an attempt to kind of protect or preserve a certain kind of Jewish identity through music. I mean, and the last thought that came to my mind listening to you is the sadness of the loss, to think of this building, to think of the music that was in this building, and to know that it was all destroyed.
Yes.
Just made me really feel like you say, that there's a real kind of, you cringe when you listen to this with the imposition of the other music on this piece. So thank you very much for taking the time and bringing to our attention the very complex story, and I hope you all enjoyed it. And now we have also a reception with some refreshments here, so please help yourself, and I hope to see you in another event here in Phoenix or somewhere else. Thank you so much.
Thank you, all of you, for coming.